Kirby Smart and the Georgia football staff took the offseason that's happened so far. They took spring football. They evaluated its weaknesses, and they went to the transfer portal on Easter Sunday and got 3 guys to help fill in those holes that they felt, and to be honest, a lot of us felt, were holes on Georgia's football team. They went and they got running back Josh McCray. They went and they got defensive tackle Josh Horton. They went and they got edge rusher Elo Mosozi. Can Mosozi be an instant impact transfer? I talked about Josh McCray a few days ago, but now I want to talk about the edge rusher from Army, because I look at all of the positions on Georgia's football team, and the one that concerns me the most is that front, right? They go out and they get Horton to add to it, but I have more confidence in the defensive line than I do in the edge rushers, and this is not me thinking that they can't be good edge rushers, but look, Georgia's losing a lot at that position, and they're losing 2 starters that were primary edge rushers last season, Walker and Chambliss, and they enter this year with a very, very big lack of experience at that position room. Ryan Curley from Dawg posts, BetMGM, the newsletter, anything you need is down below in the description of this video. But what I need to know is Mosozi going to be a day 1 starter? All right. Played 2 years at Army this past season, 6.5 sacks. He was productive. He had a 1.5 sack game against Air Force. He had a 2 sack game against UAB. That was also his season high in tackles. He had 34 total tackles. This is a guy that brought pressure to the quarterback more so than anyone on Georgia's roster did this past season, right? When you think about numbers and you think about stats, Georgia, 78-ish percent, 78 point something percent of Georgia's sack production is gone from last season. And it was already a unit that I thought needed to get to the quarterback more, but Smile Munden takes his 3 sacks with him. Chaz Chambliss takes his team-leading 6.5 sacks with him. So does Jalen Walker with his 6.5 sacks. Warren Brinson takes his 2 sacks with him. Damon Wilson in the transfer portal. The biggest reason why Georgia has an issue here is because Damon Wilson entered the transfer portal. I thought that move really, really hurt Georgia. It's part of why they had to go out and get Mosozi. I thought Damon Wilson could have been like an 8-sack guy for Georgia this coming season. Michael Williams takes his 5 sacks with him. Tyrion Dawkins takes his 3 sacks with him. And Georgia is just in a position where they don't have a lot of guys that have proven they can get to the quarterback. And part of that is because they haven't been out there on the field. They haven't been starters. We're talking about 13 sacks between Chaz Chambliss and Jalen Walker, who were staples of Georgia's defenses the last 3 seasons. Michael Williams, who was a staple of Georgia's defense the last 3 seasons, who played kind of defensive end, defensive tackle, / edge rusher role all in one. Damon Wilson, a guy who was a big part of Georgia's defense last year, and he's gone. So when you entered into this spring, Georgia's edge rusher situation was this. Gabe Harris is the guy, right? He's going to be a starter because that's the natural progression for him. He's entering junior year, big body. Well, he's hurt during the spring. So what does Georgia have? They've got Quintavious Johnson, who was a true freshman a year ago in 2024, played in some garbage time, had 4 tackles in garbage time, didn't get a sack, but obviously, like I said, he didn't play a ton. All of a sudden, that looks like to be your starting duo. Well, one of the problems with that, and maybe it's actually a blessing in disguise, and I talked about this a few weeks ago, but I'll bring that point back up. But one of the problems with that is Gabe Harris Jr. is out for the spring. He's not going to play in these scrimmages. He's not really practicing. He's dealing with an injury. So he's going to be ready for the season, but he's not ready right now. And that means the guy that's projected to be Georgia's top edge rusher isn't playing. Well, then that kind of moves Quintavious Johnson up to edge rusher 1 for Georgia in the spring. Kirby was asked about him a couple times. Kirby talked about how he did not think that Quintavious Johnson was where he needed to be. That's not me knocking Quintavious. That's me quoting Kirby. Well, Then you've got Chris Jones, who you think is, an outside linebacker. When you get to G-Day, the starting outside linebackers are Quintavious Johnson and Chris Jones. Between them, we're talking about 4 tackles because Chris Jones didn't play last year. He's a redshirt freshman this coming season. And you don't know whether or not he's going to be an impact guy. When you watch G-Day, I thought he got into the backfield, but when you watch, you're not really 100% sure, hey, is this guy going to be their guy? Is he going to rotate in with them when Gabe Harris gets healthy? You're not really sure. And I think you can make that real argument that the outside linebacker position is just Georgia's weakest. So they evaluate that and they go and they get Mosozi from Army. Truth is, Mosozi, to me, already kind of has a step above Quintavious and Chris Jones. I don't know if he quite has a step above Gabe Harris, who's a guy who is entering year 3, not year 2, year 3 in this Georgia football program and did contribute to the defense last season. I'd be surprised if Gabe Harris is not one of your starters. But when you look at Mosozi, is this not a guy who can immediately enter Georgia and be a starter as a transfer? They're going to have it at other positions. All right. When you look at the offensive side of the ball, is Zachariah Branch, is he not going to be a starter? He's going to be the kick returner, the punt returner. He's going to be one of the primary wide receivers. Is Noah Thomas not going to be one of the starters? There's an opportunity for one of the transfer defensive backs to become a starter. So why wouldn't Ella Mosozi become one of the guys? I think that there is a very good chance that happens. And the fact that he has the 6.5 sacks and 2 years of playing, he didn't just play in 2024. He played some in 2023. He immediately has an experience jump over Quintavious Johnson and over Chris Jones. He has a production jump. He has a production jump over Gabe Harris Jr., to be quite frank. When you look at his 6.5 sacks, that's more than what Gabe Harris has. But Harris is a guy who I thought performed really well in the spring of 24. I think that in a way, getting other guys to get first team, second team reps during the spring will probably help for Georgia at edge rusher. When you think about, okay, well, Gabe Harris is one of your guys. Let's get Chris Jones up to speed. Maybe Chris Jones will be an impact guy because he got these reps, and there's definitely a lot of talent there with the former 4-star. Harris, a former 4-star in himself. The truth is, this is one of Georgia's biggest question marks, and I can point to a couple of positions on Georgia's roster this season and say, hey, I think that that'll be a better group. I point at the receivers and I think, hey, that'll be a better group. Honestly, I point at the run game and I with the running backs, and I think that will be largely a better group. I think that the tight ends will improve. There are a handful of groups I think will be better. One that I point to and I think will be worse are Georgia's edge rushers. Why? They just lost Chaz Chambliss, who was on Georgia's team the last few years, contributed to multiple national championships, was Georgia's tied Georgia for sack leader last season, had a few sacks in 2023, and played a lot. And then Jalen Walker, who was a first-round talent as a hybrid linebacker and edge rusher, who had 6.5 sacks last season and was the Butkus Award winner as the nation's top linebacker. So I look at those guys and I say, hey, I don't think they're going to be better than Jalen Walker and Chaz Chambliss when I think about the combination of Mosozi, Quintavious Johnson, Gabe Harris, and Chris Jones, who I believe are the top 4 outside linebackers for Georgia heading into the season. Chris Cole, I think, will play a little bit of a hybrid role, and you'll see him rushing the passer as well. Obviously, Georgia's got defensive ends, and they've got a couple true freshmen that I think can be edge rushers in Darren Ekanagman and Isaiah Gibson, guys who look like absolute physical specimens as 18-year-old kids. But this is one group where I say, hey, I don't think it's better, and Mosozi helps that. And that's why I think he'll be an instant impact starter for the Dogs this season. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Thanks for watching.